Welcome back. Welcome back to the Baby Dad Podcast. First and foremost, happy 2025. I know I'm late, chill. It's the first episode of the year. I hope that everyone had a great and amazing 2024 and that your 2025 is even better. One of the main reasons I started this podcast was because I've come to a point in my life where you accept your truths. I'm sure I'm not the only one that talks shit to themselves for not doing this or maybe not doing that. And you get to a point where you have to first understand, next you accept, and then you adjust. I found myself living in this phrase when you want to do so much, but you end up doing nothing type of lifestyle. Like, I didn't want to accept that I was overwhelmed by all the things that I had to do and wanted to do. But you get to a point where you have to take a step back and understand you're going down a road that is leading to unproductiveness, and you need to accept it because nothing's changing and adjust those habits that led up to that. If you haven't checked out the first two episodes, make sure that you check them out. I'm available now on Amazon, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. I'll make sure to leave those links down below. With that being said, welcome to episode 3. I believe one of the hardest days for any father who was active in their kid's life since day one is waking up the next day and your kids aren't there to say good morning to. It's not a situation that's easy to accept by any means, but one you eventually have to accept. At the time, like most, I bawled my eyes out nightly. And it's one of those things that you either suffer in silence about or choose to suck it up and figure out your next move. It's not a situation or a position that you want other people to really see you in, but it's one that you have to get out of because you don't want to be that guy. You know what I mean? So again, it's an emotion that you feel like you want to let out more, but it's almost as if you're seen as weak, or it's like get over it type of mentality to kind of keep it moving. So you never really fully get to experience that feeling for what it is, because now you have to worry on your next move. Right around this time, it was tax season, and I'm working on saving money while living at my uncle's place. And already, I wasn't going to claim the kids because I knew she needed the money more than I did. And even after finding out what she did, I still offered to help pay certain bills while giving her $400 a month until she got herself together, while saving money myself to find a place. But what I had offered initially, it wasn't enough, obviously. She had a different idea of what our post-breakup was going to look like. So, boom, child support. I could have a separate podcast, I feel like, solely based off of child support and talk shit all day about that. But I will say this, just to keep it short. Child support is not intended to be a feelings-based system. You're not supposed to make life-changing decisions just based off of how you feel. And you're playing with somebody else's, essentially, life. And I say playing with somebody's life because women don't look at child support as, wow, here's one better for you. When's the last time you heard somebody put somebody on child support and then they go, wow, I can't wait to get this money so I can spend all of it on the kids? It's just, I don't think I've ever heard that. I don't think anybody's really ever said that. And anyway, child support is not supposed to be a feelings-based system. But there's nothing more dangerous than a woman hearing from the court officer that the monies that she's receiving from support is, quote, hers and she can do whatever she wants from it, end quote. And me asking, why isn't there a system for accountability at the local courthouse, and hearing, quote, we're short-staffed already, it would be impossible, end quote. You're creating an environment for these women to kind of use their own feelings as a weapon and a tool against us, pretty much at their disposal. And it's heartbreaking. Now, some people call me crazy for this next part. It'll make sense in a second, but I didn't do it for the reasons that some people thought. When I found a place to live, I found a place big enough for me and my ex's father. I did that for a few reasons. He had already been living with us since my youngest son has been born and since my oldest son was maybe like 1.5, one. And in that time, I want to say in that 4.5 years that we lived together, I want to say maybe we had one or two real disagreements. He wasn't my father, but I treated him like if he was my father. Very respected him to the last day, which is why he agreed to come and live with me. So I felt that if he lived with us, in addition to our good relationship, it allowed an environment where the kids could transition from going and living with everybody every day to this new world that they have no idea what's going on. The only thing that they're really concerned about is having two parties for everything, From their perspective, they don't really see the picture like that, right? But from my perspective, I tried to keep together what I could, if that makes sense. So that being one of the reasons. We just had a really good understanding of our boundaries. And I'm not the type of person to say, hey, just because this happened between me and somebody, that everybody that's tied to that person, I see a certain type of way. No, unless you had some influence into a negative behavior or something like that. But it didn't stop me from being who I was. And on the contrary, I mean, if anything, I continued being who I was. And me asking and putting my hand out to have him live with me was just, and him saying yes, and him living with me for some time after that kind of just, I felt like solidified what my intention really was. I wasn't, again, you go in a situation knowing that, hey, it's either going to work out this way or that way. And I just knew that there was only so many things that I can control. And her dad coming and living with me was more, it was just a question away from making it a reality. And it worked. And it did work. And it worked out really well. So I was very grateful for that. But I got a question for you. Do you think that when she got a house or a place big enough that would be able to accommodate him, that she asked him to move in with her? I'll leave that open-ended for now. Yeah, so getting back into it, like most of the fathers I spoke to, if we want to be a part of seeing our kids every day, why do we need to involve the courts? And at first it was very frustrating knowing that we couldn't even agree on a 50-50 schedule, that it had to succumb to having to go to court. Again, do I think that there's cases where having to go to court is necessary? Yes, of course. But it's not rocket science to say that if we already agree on 50-50, let's do 50-50. But when the agenda is different, now you want and need certain days off, and know that with the courts, if something comes up where you need a day that falls on your court ordered day, and you know that I'll jump at the opportunity to spend more times at the kids or with the kids, cool, I'll come grab them. But if I need a day that falls on my quote unquote court order day, you get to use the court order against me because it never lines up with your schedule. Again, the court order isn't intended to be a feelings-based system, but what we fail to acknowledge and turn a blind eye to is that we've allowed it to be just that, when the system itself is allowing these women to make life-changing decisions based off of their emotions. So I'm a bit of a jokester, and what better way to kind of get over that recent breakup situation and everything than by posting a couple of memes. It's just my way of trying to get over and make fun of a situation, I guess you can say. So I did. I posted a couple memes on social media, and looking back at it, I was definitely acting on emotion and shouldn't have posted them, even though I thought that they were funny, but it was childish. But still kind of funny. I don't know if you remember the video of the guy getting wrecked with the twisted tea can, but I put her face on the guy holding the twisted tea can. I put when you leave a good guy on the can itself, and then I put my face on the guy getting smacked with the twisted tea can. But look, I'm not one to sit here and say I'm no saint. I definitely have my flaws, but one thing that I never did was step outside my relationship. Never stepped outside my relationship. I'm the type of person that if I'm all in, I'm all in. I mean, I even asked the mother of my children to marry me, shortly after we found out that we were going to have our first kid, because I knew the type of lifestyle that I wanted. I knew the type of life that I wanted. When you kind of get things are good like they are, 4, 5, 6 years later, you kind of get the feeling that you were never really on the same page. So I made fun of the situation. And the other meme was me putting her face on the Grinch's body because Christmas was never going to be the same again. Again, probably not the best idea to post it on social media because I was definitely threatened to get sued if I didn't take them down. Now, fellas, I'll say this. If you truly are feeling overwhelmed with everything going on and you really don't know how to handle this situation, it's more than okay to get help. Look, I'll be the first to say I didn't know what to do. I mean, I took advice from people, yes, but I had an emotional barrier that I was struggling with. I took the opportunity to go to therapy and it changed everything for me. I was against it because I felt that I was weak if I went to therapy, but I understood that nothing was going to change if I kept thinking the way I did. So I accepted the fact that I needed help and I went to therapy. And here's why. Once you get past the first few months of bullshit back and forth and the petty stuff, you realize life goes on, right? Or so you thought. Here's when things got bad, then worse. And here's where me being ignorant taught me one of the most valuable lessons. I want to say 3 or 4 months after we separated, we ended up sleeping together. Now, she mentioned that she hadn't been sleeping with nobody, blah, 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 whatever. Okay, sure. Let me give you the benefit of the doubt, whatever. But when I thought, what I thought to be just, one night stand type of thing after we broke up, cool, blah, blah, blah. And it's okay to laugh at me now. Like, I could sit here and think of my mindset back then thinking, maybe she did it, maybe she didn't, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, I don't know how stupid I just flat out my thinking was. I mean, again, I didn't think it could happen to me until it did type of mentality. But I ended up learning my biggest lesson in that moment because what happened was I got a call. I want to say, I don't even think it was a week. I want to say 3 days um, after we had slept together, telling me that she had got an STD. And I already knew I was clean because what she didn't know is I had got tested maybe a couple weeks prior between us sleeping together. And I said, okay, just because I have my test before, I'm going to go ahead and get a test again in case she tries to say something. Well, guess what? I guess this was like the world's way of telling me to wake the fuck up. Because when I got my test came back negative and her test came back positive for said whatever it was. And at that moment, I realized everything was different. At that moment, all respect was out the window. All respect was out the window. Because of course, no one knew what was going on or why I may have shut myself out or most of the world, but you start to realize quickly who is who. To deliberately try to pin something on somebody, to try to maybe continue manipulating a situation, not knowing what health risks could come because of said X, Y, and Z. All respect was out the window. From that moment, I focused on myself. I went to therapy and I unloaded every feeling I had. And it allowed someone who truly cared about her job to guide me through all of these situations. I don't know if this would ever cross your ears, but shout out to Dr. Lisa Cordero. Completely changed my perspective on so many different topics. And I'll never forget what she said. She said, quote, "You get out of therapy what you put into it," end quote. And that's exactly what I did. I do feel that the first step in genuinely moving forward from a situation is to try to get over your emotional self. That is not something that is easy to do, but it will allow you to make more rational decisions instead of being impulsive. When you truly work on yourself, you move on. And that's what I did. I separated my feelings from the situation, and 5 months later, I ended up finding my future ex-wife. When I broke the news that I was seeing someone, she immediately told me she was dating somebody, which was news to me, but whatever, I didn't care. And she had asked to meet my then girlfriend. Here's my thing. Yeah, eventually you'll meet her, but you don't get to choose or dictate when you meet her. And because I told her that she couldn't meet her when she wanted to meet her, I got threatened to not be able to see the kids again because of that. And What's crazy is that all these things that I speak of where, the kids are involved or I got threatened with the kids, all of these things have been brought up in court where she had admitted to them. And I've had proof to show the judge and the hearing officer. So I'm not saying or speaking out of context. When I say these things, I don't speak out of false context. I have proof of all of it, and all of it's already been discussed in the courts. So the part of me having this podcast was because of I've already spoken to the people that are supposedly caring about quote unquote these kids' future and how they're quote unquote brought up based off their environment and this and that. But these are the details that everybody looks past. It's like they don't care that these things end up hurting most of us from a kid's standpoint of view as we grow up and not knowing that somebody in your own family was willing to neglect you of someone's love because of their own feelings. I don't know. I would never understand that. Never in a million years will I understand how that can just continue to be looked past time and time again. But that was just a little tangent. But here's where it went from bad to worse. I am dating who ended up being my ex-wife at the time, and the kids had a football game maybe 10 to 15 minutes away. The mother of my kids was without a car, and she asked if she can ride with me to the game, and I told her no, she can take an Uber. Most people would say that is petty. I call it putting a boundary. If you can take an Uber to party, if you didn't have a car and you can take an Uber, then you can take an Uber to go to your kid's game. No free rides over here. That ship sailed with my respect. But when I said no, you can take an Uber, she looked at the kids and said, "See, boys, daddy doesn't want to be mommy's friend." And that killed me. Like in that moment, I realized like that she was evil. Like I felt that that's something that's evil to do. Why would you, again, something that she admitted to the hearing officer in court time and time and time again, admitting to telling the kids, "See, daddy doesn't want to be my friend." And every action she took after that day was represented by that statement. That's when she started deleting my text. I would send to the kids to make it seem like I wasn't communicating with them. Again, agreed to in court, or agreed to that she did that. Make funner quote unquote plans on the days that I was supposed to pick them up so that they would ask me to stay with her so that they can do X, Y, and Z. Date my, at the time, ex girlfriend's ex to try and talk shit about me, to spread rumors, make me jealous. I mean, the list went on. You know what it's like to hear her not only admit all these things to the hearing officer in court, and the officer say, "Here we are trying to get fathers to see their kids, and here you are just trying to push them away." And then there was nothing that I could do about it. Nothing that I could do about it. The person that is supposed to help make a decision that's in the best interest of the kids is telling me she's pushing me away. Knowing this, you have to learn to become you have to become emotionally resilient, or as I like to call it, bulletproof. There's no doubt that the frustration and the moves taken are enough to drive anyone over the edge, but there's a bigger picture. If I allow your actions and emotions to control and dictate my actions and emotions, I will never be free. If you're wondering if her pops was still living with me while I was dating my ex, the answer is yes. If you're wondering if her pops liked my ex, the answer is yes. He spoke actually nice about her to the mother of my kids. And that kind of just drove her over the edge, if you would. And what happened next was not only malicious, but it was disgusting. What happens when you can't solve a problem? You try a different solution. Now, we can argue the intentions of the actions she took, but when she realized emotionally I can no longer be damaged, I found me and her pops were arguing more and more after one of my 12 court dates at the time. It didn't make sense. Well, long story short, being the man that he is and me being me, one day I asked him kind of what was up. Well, he showed me a text of his daughter saying, "I'm saying all these nasty things about her, and which now jeopardized the relationship that I had genuinely cared about for and built with her father. Just like any father, if your child is saying something, it's going to put some strain, especially like he's living with me at the time. Like he is actively in my house living with me. And when the kids are not there and they're with her, it's just me and him. But when you find that you try to damage somebody emotionally and you can't succeed, now you have to try to attack other points that you feel that are going to hit them so that they can feel it, so that you can kind of get this fulfillment of whatever it is that you need to feel like you kind of got back at somebody in a sense. But what was disheartening is that, again, a relationship that I uh, genuinely cared about was diminished because of somebody feeling some type of way. I don't know. It's bizarre. And while I knew him living with me forever was unrealistic, I didn't want our relationship to fall apart poorly because someone was playing mind games. On the next episode, we're going to dive a little bit more into what happens in that type of situation where now you have somebody that is being deliberate in their actions. And how do you keep yourself together? It's not easy to be in a position or a situation where you have all of these emotions that you really don't know what to do with. On the next episode, we're going to dive into what happens next in this situation. And if you had a similar situation where, you try to do good for the better of the situation and it kind of seems like it doesn't matter what you do or how good you seem like you're doing it, it just doesn't seem to work. We'll dive into that next because I think that that's something that, excuse me, a lot of us suffer with, thinking that, hey, look, if I continue to try to do the right thing, then maybe things will start to turn around. And in some circumstances they do, but it takes two. It takes both individuals to be able to work through a situation. But what do you do when you have somebody that's just relentless? Come and find out on the next episode, baby. Peace. But before we leave, just kidding. One last thing before we get out of here is just want to give a quick shout out to my kids. Something that I said I was going to do at the end of every podcast. So to my boys and my baby girl, Daddy loves you very much. Peace.